Last week we started talking about using IPFS to post a file as sort of a proof of just a sort of an experiment to see how easy it would be to use IPFS as a backend. We were also talking about the ISCC, which was that hashing solution that Jim had posted. I thought was very interesting. And using DID as a type of, to create, I guess, JSON file with certain data points sort of posted in there that can be used by other platforms because it's a standardized protocol. I was wondering, Jim, about DID. Do you see that this could basically function as a type of protocol for a repository, like not a repository, what's the word? Like a standardized framework for provenance?
Yeah, primarily it's a naming. It's a way of addressing objects on the network. So it's the decentralized directory. Okay. Now, Lamux DAPI is a directory of programs, which is related. These programs could have DIDs also, the decentralized identifiers.
The programs could contracts as well.
Well, so Gary, you posted in the Discord, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond. This week has been kind of hectic, but like you said that you had successfully posted something to IPFS, and it wasn't difficult.
Yes, with their web interface, I installed it in just a few clicks and posted a file to posted a file to it. And let me just share my screen, and so you can just see what I've done. It's not much, but so anyway, here's
they have like an interface now?
Yeah, this is a web interface, and to get started with, there's no reason to go any further than web interface just to see what we're on.
Oh, this is much more sophisticated than I thought. I used to only work via command line.
Yes, and so I created a directory called director, and I'm proposing that we call this project director, but that's open to debate. So anyway, in the director file, I uploaded some different files. This is my logo I use a lot. It's called the Starry Plow. And now, how do you navigate here?
And so each one of those files that's the hash listed below each file. Go back to the folder, director.
Yeah. Yes.
So the folder gets its own hash, and then each file within the folder also gets hashed.
Yes, and don't question my expertise on this too much, because I don't know much more about it than this. But my point in this whole exercise was, and you can start browsing the IPFS network, and here's an archive of something called Project Apollo with all of their files and all their hashes. And here are my peers, and I have 49 peers now across the world, and I don't know what that means. So but bottom line is, this is how easy it is to post files on the network. Now, the next step would be to install, to make sure you can run the command line and do exactly the same thing. There's also another step which we need to do, is for others to install just this interface and see if we can share files amongst ourselves. So that would be, I think that's the next that's one of the things that several of us ought to consider doing by next time is install the web interface, uploading some files, and then be thinking about how we can access others' files, and then we'll start thinking about permissions and rights.
Now,
You can access these files by a URL, right?
Yes, you can, and that's also one of the things that we need to do. And I have not successfully done that yet, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but that might be something we work on in a work session.
we can do that now. We should do that now.
What choices do you get when you click on the three dots?
Which three? These three?
Oh, on the right-hand side?
So three dots associated with the file?
Yeah.
Oh, copy hash. Share. Ooh.
So when it says share, it gives me this. And so I can copy this, and it looks like I should be able to put that in a web browser, right? Copy.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And so, but when I go to a web browser and do this, I don't get what I was expecting, or at least I didn't last time. And in fact, I believe that's all I get. It won't do anything. So I'm not doing something right yet, and I think it has to do with installing the command line, and I may have messed that up.
No, it's just taking a long time.
Yeah, Gary, where is this being served from? Is this actually hosted on their decentralized cloud, or are you pegging this someplace?
It's being hosted on my 49 peers.
But that URL is for the main website of ipfs.io.
Yeah.
So it's just very slow. It didn't fail. It's just very, very slow.
Well, okay, let's go look at my statistics now and see if we can.
Wait, you're saying 49 what? 49 peers? Is that a website that you run, Gary?
No. Well, I'm sort of hosting a node here, right?
Okay, so it's local on your computer is the IPFS node.
Yeah. But so I am getting some outgoing stuff, but I wouldn't know why.
Does it need to propagate to other peers before it will like kind of like the way BitTorrent works, where the more peers?
Well, it would, maybe the command has to propagate, but my file has been on there for a long time.
64 peers. Interesting. 9 kilobytes. And that's, I mean, our seeing that picture is being served from, that picture is being served from IPFS.
That's my understanding.
Now,
it's served on his local node.
Oh, it's being served from Gary's local node?
Right.
But why this doesn't work, I haven't quite figured out yet. So someone else may want to try going through the exercise without my assistance and seeing if.
Gary, can you post the link to it, and then I'll try and look at it from my browser?
The link to what?
Well, like the file that you want to share, like.
Okay, yeah, share the file, and I'll post that in the channel.
Because I think if I go on IPFS and I copy and paste that hash, I can maybe see your file, but let's see how that works for me.
Okay, now I need to get back to the channel. I'm gonna have to stop sharing.
I spoke with the Holochain folks briefly last week. There wasn't any movement as far as connecting really with the larger community, but Michael put me in touch with someone from that community. So I'm hoping this week I maybe have more of a chance to reach out to them.
We have our working group meeting with the Holochain people later today. Isn't that right, Jim?
Or is it tomorrow? Wasn't it next last Tuesday? I couldn't go because I was in class. How did that go?
Okay.
It went all right. I mean, we followed the getting started instructions and ran the test program. That's about it. We didn't have anybody really from HoloChain on board. This week we should have some more representation from HoloChain on the call, which is tomorrow.
We had a couple of inquirers from HoloChain that came to see if they could learn anything, but we just didn't have any guides. I mean, we did have a guide, but he got there too late to help the inquirers.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to learn more about their platform and how we can sort of network with them and see how we can work with them.
Did you meet Raymond Powell at the when we were in New York City at the?
No, I don't think so.
Yes, he committed to coming every week and getting people up to speed on developing apps on HoloChain.
Oh, word.
He is a programmer, but it's not clear that he's.
We'll all be learning at the same time as
that much up to date with respect to the new HoloChain procedures, which apparently are going to change again. But
this is loading very slowly. This is interesting.
Yeah.
This may tell us something about FSBS or IPFS. I'm guessing once it downloads, you will have access to it immediately. But until then,
or maybe I'm wondering if it's like because it's peer-to-peer, maybe there needs to be a threshold of servers that are mirroring the file in order for it to serve fast enough. Like,
yeah.
So in other words, like right now it's only your computer, but maybe it needs to be mirrored across 100 computers. I mean, this like, how is DTube running DTube off of IPFS? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, DTube is fantastic.
It works. I mean, it's like a perfect YouTube clone. So like,
Yeah.
There's got to be a way of serving content fast enough.
yeah, I think the main site is probably just too busy.
But if we were, if we had our own network set up and we're peering each other, I'm guessing these sorts of things would start becoming, very responsive for us. But again, I still don't understand why DTube works so well.
I mean, I think they're pegging to a massive amount of cloud servers.
So instead of my 50 peers, they're 100, maybe 10,000 peers or something.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, and I don't know how they're funding that. I mean, that's an insanely costly endeavor. I mean, I guess maybe they're funding it off of Steam.
Well, they have Filecoin.
Oh,
They may have raised money on Filecoin.
for
But,
DTube?
I don't think they're charging for storage yet, which.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like one thing I didn't do this week. I didn't go back and reread the IPFS white paper and Filecoin paper. That was on my list. Just there wasn't time.
But do we want to talk any more about, your specific karaoke idea? Which I think the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is great because, in essence, what we would be doing is, and I'm seeing it more as, not the blockchain so much as art, but the project itself as art. The collaborative what you're buying is not just the artifact, but all of the actions, or as many of the actions that we can encapsulate into this contract, is what you're buying, or you're investing as a participant in. You're becoming a part of the art.
You're becoming a part of the art. Boom. There you go, Gary. That is like absolutely 100% the idea, right? Yeah. But I think we can, I'm happy to talk about like sort of the aesthetics and like the higher level stuff, but maybe I think like there's like the lower level kind of like, can we make an IPFS? Can we make a picture? Can we all co-host a static image? Would I think be a really, because there's going to be all these like tech stumbling blocks. And so what I'm wondering is, if we build a roadmap and start with distributed storage and really try and nail this and figure out what we have to do to make that part work, then we can sort of then talk incrementally. And as we talk about each of the components, there's a specific aesthetic conversation that can happen as we discuss each component. Like in my mind, the distributed autonomy, the post-capitalist karaoke project enables us to work through the distributed object framework as we create the project itself, right? Like the art objects. So they're inexorably intertwined. So what I am wondering is, maybe what we should do is focus on sharing an IPFS node or an image between all the people here, and see if we can sort of get that running. Sorry, Lamouette. Is that your name? Lament?
Yeah, yep, that's fine.
Lamouette, or how do you say it?
Lamouette, yes.
Lamouette. Sorry, I'm sorry. We're just in the middle of talking about all this stuff. Do you want to give us a quick introduction to your project before we could dive into IPFS?
Yes. Okay, let's go. And it's interesting because so Dappy, I might share my screen. I'll try to keep it short. Is it share? Okay. Desktop 2.
There we go. We see your screen now.
Okay, which one do you see? That one? Yes. Okay. So Dappy is it's kind of a decentralized internet web browser. So the main idea is that instead of connecting to servers through a URL, you connect to you directly query a blockchain node, and they send you blockchain files that have been stored on the blockchain. So it's a bit different than IPFS, because it has to every node has to have the integrity of the file, and this is why we need a true blockchain platform like our chain. So the idea is that you deploy files online. So this is kind of an example with a HTML file, but it can be a PDF or a PNG image. So I guess it won't work because I have problems currently. So you just deploy. This is just a simple blockchain transaction, and I just sent some big long string. So this is my file. You can see here the meme type, application Dappy, the name of the file, and this is the content of the index.html. And the main idea is that when the file is available, you are able to launch it just like web browser tabs. You just have to click. And this is the idea of your file. So So it's a bit, it looks like IPFS a bit. Okay, so I have some problems with my local blockchain. But the idea is that you put files online that they are stored on the blockchain, and then you query some node for that file to be loaded on your browser. So there is no strict dependency with a server that is exposed to the web. Maybe to load one image, it will query this node, and maybe for another image, it might query another server. So the goal here, when the DAPI network is deployed, is to have 20 or 30 servers powering the network. So this is the idea. And it's funny because the interface we saw earlier with the file uploading module for IPFS, I will probably develop a very similar interface in DAPI because we need to be able to upload images or any kind of file, and then link them to a URL. So our friends can download it on their DAPI client. So that's the idea.
So it's like a distributed store. It's like a distributed server application.
Finally, it's very simple. It's sort of a blockchain block explorer. So when I query, for example, when I click on that one, it's just it just addresses a query to a node of the blockchain that exposes an API, and the DAPI client just wants to know what is the file at this address. So it's that simple, and of course the client has to do that because the blockchain is too heavy to be. The client is too light to run the entire blockchain on the computer, on the device.
Wait, can you just tell me simply what this does? It's like a block explorer that enables you to get an application served to this DAPI browser.
Yeah, the goal is that you'll be able to do exactly what you do with a web browser, but there is no you as an application owner. If you deploy an application, you won't own a physical server. You will for example, I bought that name. It is linked to my public key, and then my friends will be able just like with the DNS system to search for this term and have the file I uploaded on the blockchain loaded on their computer.
Specifically for our chain, or is this supposed to be interoperable between other blockchains?
For now, it's just it's dedicated to our chain platform, but in the future, you might see some other adapters to connect to other platforms. So right now it's just our chain, but it is you might be able to do instead of this query to do some other query on other blockchain. It can work with any blockchain. But yes, right now and for the following months, it will be entirely dedicated to our chain platform.
So, I mean, in theory, I mean, maybe Ned can speak to this. I mean, my understanding of our chain is it's supposed to be able to, this is part of the functionality that's going to be built into mainnet anyway, yeah?
Yes, the problem is that this is why I consider IPFS for some third-party applications, is that I guess it will be very expensive to store large files on the Archain main network. And at first, there will not be shards on Archain. So there will be just one blockchain with one unique pricing. So I guess that storing a 1 megabyte file on Archain network will not be possible or will be very expensive.
Yeah, so we don't know that yet. I mean, they're still working on the cost accounting. But
okay.
So is this a separate blockchain then? Like, I don't understand. Like, if it's going to be so expensive to store things on our chain, is this setting up like a different network? It's like, or it's like, how is this using our chain if it's too expensive to store anything on our chain?
Yeah. So blockchains in general are expensive for storing large amounts of data. And so, Greg's strategy has been that we're going to be about a third less than Ethereum, but it's still, I think the one thing everybody knows, it's still going to be very expensive. And so sorry, lost my train of thought there. So there was a proposal by Mike Stay way back to do something called Rent, which so the way it is now, when you deploy your contract that puts your file on the blockchain, you have to pay all the fees up front for that file to be stored in perpetuity, right? Because the blockchain is immutable. Yeah. And that's why it gets expensive. So this idea of Rent was that you could say, well, I only want the file stored for a year, for 5 days, whatever your use case called for. And therefore, it would be a lot less expensive because, so think about it. If we're storing all this data on the blockchain, that means that who's ever running the nodes, the validators, and they're storing the entire blockchain, they got to now pony up, right, for storage space. And so obviously, if it's, for argument's sake, if it's going to cost them, $500 to store your massive file, and they want to make a profit, they're going to have to charge that it's how it works in Ethereum. So when you deployed that file through the smart contract, you're going to have to pay that whole sum up front. So this idea of Rent was created that you would only pay a small amount because the validator, the host, would know that in a week's time they could just get rid of the file and free up the disk space. Right. So therefore, they wouldn't. So the rent would be a lot less, and therefore the gas in this rent model would be a lot less.
But then that's presuming that you can store the file in another shard, and you're only uploading it to the main shard to validate it.
Yeah. So eventually, with Rent, when we get sharding, perhaps there will be a file storage shard, which, it's not going to have huge transaction throughput, so it could be a lot less expensive. And it's kind of like having a quantum computer or some kind of Western Digital caviar drive that's like a clunker, but it doesn't have to, because the files are going to be stored there. It's not transaction based. So maybe instead of costing, $10 a megabyte, it's going to cost, 0.3 of a penny per megabyte. And that would be on a separate shard.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question for right now is, like, there's all these hypothetical future scenarios, and I'm sort of interested in what can we do right now as a proof of concept, that's, it's like, I really need to think about this whole idea of, like, the cost of storing things on the blockchain. And, like, if it's going to be so expensive ultimately to do that, I'm not certain what problems it's really solving. You know what I mean? Like, if it's that astronomically expensive, I don't know if it solves any of my personal problems, but maybe for certain people it does, but they're probably going to be very rich people. And I'm not interested in rich people.
Yeah. So, I've always thought of hybrid solutions were the most pragmatic.
Here's so Andrei Andronopoulos, so he's a Bitcoin maximalist, right? So he said, you should go through your hard drive once a year and hash it up, and then you take that hash and you store that hash on the blockchain.
Oh,
and that would totally protect the security of your files. You don't have to put the files on the blockchain, but you put the hash that represents those files on the blockchain. That way you know if they're tampered with. I mean, Jim knows this goes back to the old days when we had checksums at the bottom of every file, right? You hashed all the rows of data and you came up with a checksum, and that was with the file, and that's the first thing you did. You checked the checksum of the file, and then you knew whether the file came in intact or not. But yeah, storing this kind of huge amount of data on a blockchain is right now and is super expensive. And our chain, I think, is the only blockchain that's thinking about how to possibly do this and reducing costs.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, the system, the distributed art object framework doesn't necessarily require that the files be stored on a blockchain. Like, there's other ways of authenticating, cheaper ways of authenticating that this thing has been individuated, and that's like kind of right now what I'm primarily looking to do here. And then at a certain point, when it does become possible to store files on a blockchain, then awesome. Like, maybe let's do that. But like right now, like we don't actually need to do that for the art object to be inexorably tied to this sort of techno-legal stack. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the way I would do it is I would look to store the art object itself on some other off-chain solution, and then use the blockchain for the whole accounting and distribution and rights and all that, because that's what the blockchain is great at.
So if Gary is saying that he thinks that we can set up a local kind of IPFS node that we're all sharing, that will solve that problem for us, because it's not going to cost us anything to be part of a main IPFS shard.
Right. Yeah, you just have to write the piece that uses that kind of treats IPFS as an oracle, where you can trust, right? So the whole other thing is that you have to be able to trust. So how do you know that the IPFS system wasn't hacked? So that's where you could create some kind of on-chain hashing key mechanism, and that way you know what's in IPFS is legit and hasn't been tampered with.
But but IPFS already generates that hash, no?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, like, but if you wanted to then take that hash and store that on the blockchain as kind of more proof that it hasn't.
Yeah, I mean,
otherwise we all have to have that hash in our own secret vaults, and once a year you'll come and say, okay, guys, we all need to check the hash. But if we store the hash on the blockchain and then have a smart contract, we could just run that smart contract, even once a day, once a week.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's about 4 or 5 hashes that we need, right? There's the file itself, right? And we've run that through a hasher, right? So that's now been hashed. We then throw that on IPFS, and IPFS delivers us a hash, right? Then there's the certificate of authenticity, right, which is stored on a blockchain, and the smart contract, each of which also have their own hashes. And basically, all those hashes need to be mirrored in all the other places. So like the IPFS hash is stored in the certificate of authenticity and the smart contract, right? They're pointing towards each other. And then we're using a token to actually unlock the IPFS file, which is where the private key is stored, right? Because the token lives in your wallet, and it unlocks the thing, and you can get in there. And that in and of itself, I think, is enough to authenticate that this file is real and it's like hasn't been tampered with, because there's 5 hashes. And in order to fuck with that file, you would need to re-upload the file in its entirety, which would give it an entirely new hash. And that needs to be illegally executed by, I don't know, a gallerist or a museum curator, a lawyer, someone with authenticity, authority to actually rehash the art object. That could actually only be the artist in certain cases.
Why would the hash be different? Do they also add like things like date and timestamp to it? Because the file.
Yes. It's date and timestamp. First off. Second off, the file, we have obsolescence. You know, it's like a video file made 15 years ago needs to be upgraded to whatever the more recent codec is. And we have to assume every 10 to 15 years, the files are going to need to be updated. So part of what has to happen here, and this is not something that we can automate, this is just something that the artists are going to have to do, is stipulate what the nature of the work is, and therefore how it gets updated over time, right, to plan for obsolescence. So if I made some trippy Flash animation 15 years ago, that's going to be recreated in HTML5 using JavaScript, okay, but then define what the work actually is, right? Does it necessitate the use of Flash? In which case you need retro hardware. Like Cornell University has a lot of this early net art. They have like Macromedia Director files, and they have these old Apple computers from 15 years ago to play them because they won't play on modern computers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like the ancient art of the Japanese airing ceremony. So you know, like in my Buddhist sect, you know, there are scrolls that go back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So every year they have an airing ceremony because to keep them preserved. Otherwise, like the oils from the paper would destroy the contents. So they actually have to expose it to air.
Whoa.
So this is kind of like, you know, this is like the modern version of, you know.
Or you get some motherfucker to write that shit in a Word document. You know what I mean? It's just like.
Yeah, but how do we know Word is going to be around in 50 years?
That's why you upgrade it. You update it. You put in instructions to upgrade the thing. It happens over time. Right. It's time stamped. It's date stamped. It's stamped all over. Everything's stamped, right?
Right.
And then we can.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you have to write that into your smart contract.
That shit. Stamp it. And so, yeah. So that happens in the smart contract. Stipulates the nature of what the work is, and therefore we can upgrade this thing over time. So therefore, the artist is really the only one that has authority, ultimately, to reissue the file as a new hash. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then the question is, who's paying for that? Is the cost of all future work included in the initial contract, or is
the collectors always are going to pay for that?
Right. So then, So
or the museum or whoever's putting the exhibit up. You know what I mean? They're going to have to pay to if my work goes into the museum collection, they have media archivists there. This is what they do now. They figure out how to update artworks from the 70s and the 60s and the 70s and 80s that need to be re-engineered, you know?
But the blockchain doesn't know how to do that. Blockchain is you pay everything up front. So your smart contract will have to have, sorry?
In gas fees, you mean?
Yeah, it's all got to be paid up front.
But that's not what we're talking about, though. The artwork is going to be updated off chain. It says, no, this has nothing to do with the blockchain. This is just the instructions. Or like, if I made a video 20 years ago that was 640 by 480, can I upgrade that to 4K one day? You know what I mean?
Right, but then you're gonna, so say you do that all off chain, and then you're going to need to update all those new hashes on chain, and somebody's gonna have to pay for that.
Yeah, but how much does that cost?
Well, whether it's a penny or $100, there has to be some kind of entity that's going to run that smart contract and pay for it.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with that right now because I'm not married to any chain. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. I don't know. Like, as far as I'm concerned, whatever chains exist right now probably won't exist in 10 years. So like whether or not who or what's going to pay for it, it doesn't matter right now. What matters is that the framework is there. And then we can figure out later, if it becomes too expensive to maintain on one chain, you go to a different chain that can do it in a different way. You know, it's just like.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is somebody's got to be the administrator of all that.
Yeah, so that's the estate, basically. Like whatever the artist's estate is, they are executors of that. You know, that's the way it is currently.
Yeah.
I mean, for other forms of property, I don't know. I'm sure it's different if I've got this antique, I don't know, whatever, magazine.
What's that?
Oh, it's just a magazine.
No, I mean, what's a magazine?
Oh, I don't know. It's a thing. It's paper. It's got some advertisements in it. It's got some art.
I paid not to have advertising.
Yeah, I know. This was, I didn't pay for this. So this was free.
No, I'm busting.
Oh, Kevin Beasley. Oh, anyway, so guys, so can we take a 5-minute break and then start trying to mess with this IPFS thing? Gary, does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I have another meeting, so I won't join you for that. But
All right, let's see if we can knock something out in the next half an hour. Just give me like 2 minutes. All right, I'll be right back.
Okay. Yep.
well, Eric, is anything else we need to talk about?
Ned, you're going to be able to join us tomorrow for our DApp developer working group?
I may or may not. I may be traveling, so I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But if I'm around, I will.
Okay.
So I loaded this. I have 188 gears now.
How long has yours been installed, Jim?
Just for about 20 minutes, I guess.
I wonder why mine is so much lower.
Okay, now I tried. Now to add a connection here, okay, I have to have the IP address.
Is that the total world of IPFS right now?
No, I'm sure it's not. I don't know if it's random connections or what. But
I was going to say that's not a lot of adoption. So is that Fairfield?
See,
Watch-
that's what I was getting, Jim. That timeout.
yeah, that's what we get when we access this.
Now, did you just install the web interface, or did you try to install both?
I installed the web interface.
Okay, so the next step is to install the command line, right? And I'm sorry, I thought it came with the web interface like it does with Keybase.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, this is running on your local host. So, what I did was,
You should be able to get to the command line now, right?
I don't know. I don't know that I installed that.
Okay.
Well, this is I went to install the desktop,
Yeah, that's what I got. IPFS Web UI.
but it's web UI, right? Web interface to IPFS.
So we going to, is it just IPFS.io?
Yeah,
So it's
get started.
Publish and share your files. Oh boy. Do I have to install a client on my computer?
I didn't do any of this npm install or anything.
Install the IPFS desktop app?
Yeah, I didn't do that.
Oh, is this like, oh, here we go. Mac.
Okay, what I did was I went a front end for IPFS localhost 5001 web UI. I just went there. Okay, and in the browser now, I get this desktop interface.
Wait, whose screen are we looking at right now? Was this Gary's or Jim's?
This is mine.
Oh.
Okay, did you follow me here? I guess your Mac is different.
I'm installing the local host. Should I not be doing that?
Yeah, should be doing that.
I'm installing the file, right? It's downloading the IPFS desktop app right now.
And
Oh,
then,
so I got the desktop app, which is different than the local host.
Oh, really? Wouldn't the local host be looking at the desktop app?
yeah, if you, I mean, it said desktop app, but it said it went to web interface. This is, I guess, the desktop app in the web browser.
Oh, how do you get there? Just local?
I just downloaded the thing and I ran it.
Oh, okay.
And then I had to go to this address. Okay, it's at the beginning of the instructions here.
Ooh, this is really exciting. IPFS desktop.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to be able to connect unless we get external IP addresses.
Really?
Be the problem.
EFS.
Okay, it says, okay, so we had install the IPFS desktop app. You have ensure your data is stored permanently. Learning about pinning. Which
Pinning. Yeah, pinning is what we need to do.
we need to pin it if we want stuff stored permanently.
IPFS is running. Oh, wow.
Explore how to flexibly scale data storage using IPFS cluster, which may be what we want to do, have our own cluster. Okay, so when we downloaded the app and we ran it, okay, I can't even see where I downloaded it right now. Oh, here. I got it. Okay, so there's the Mac version, the Windows version.
I've got the Mac version installed now, but I don't know what to do. It's got a little thing up my corner of my screen, but I don't know how to open a browser. Oh, here we go. Ah,
You found it?
yeah. I have the app open now. This is cool. Merkle Forest. Ooh.
Hello.
How I got to this.
34 peers. Can I add a connection to one of you? Ooh. So
I don't think you can,
it
because
says there's a button that says add connection. If you go to the cube on the left, and then there's like a map of the world, and in the top right it says add connection. So I can like add your IP address or something.
right, but we
Don't have IP addresses.
Oh, we don't?
yeah, we don't have IP addresses.
Well, you must if you have this installed. Like, what's my IP address?
We've got dynamic
It's
IP.
localhost. We're running it.
Yes, I guess you all have dynamic IP address. If it's your domestic connection, it's very much probable.
Yes.
But there is a website which is called Who Am I? You just hit Who Am I in Google, and it tells you your IP address.
Okay.
But normally that's the address of your router, not your machine.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
I mean, I'm at a university, so like God knows what my thing is.
Yeah, you're behind a firewall probably.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But I mean, my IPFS node seems like it's active. It's like uploading some form of kilobyte data.
Yeah.
Oh, so like, all right, so like, check it out. Like, this is my peer ID. I'm gonna post this in the chat. Yeah, so like right there, he says add connection. I think that this is my ID, so maybe you guys can connect to me with this. Oh, whoops, I didn't copy the whole thing. This is the
There is mine.
Hey guys, I got to run.
I'll see you next.
See you, Ned.
I'm around. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
No, you can't see. Oh, darn it. Now I can never see my chat.
So Lemoet, you're using this like for part of your system right now?
Me?
Yeah, are you using this for part of your system?
No, not at all. I've never used IPFS yet.
I tried to paste that into my add connection, and I can't paste in there. Is anybody else able to paste?
I just into it, but I couldn't add it.
Can you post your peer ID and then maybe see?
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
Now I get a different address.
If you go to the top thing, it's like if you go to your stats, that's where it's located. Your peer ID is located in your stats.
All right, I'm gonna look at.
I can't even copy it. Or does it copy it and I don't know it?
It's just copy and paste it.
Oh yeah, it did. It just okay. Maybe I can paste. Hold on. Well, no, it's not pasting, but I can. Okay, here we go. Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. I can't even copy. How did you copy?
Here, let me go to screen. Where's my screen? How do I share my screen?
So in the bottom toolbar in the middle, there's a green box that says share. And I can add.
In here and
Did you? Good try.
are you able to copy it, Gary? And paste it into the chat window.
So when you hit add connection, it gives you an example. It says /IP4
Yeah, I got it.
/ and then it gives you an IP address. And then it gives a TCP, and then it gives a 4001, and then it gives an IPFS, and then it gives.
There's mine.
Yeah, this is complicated, huh?
Right, but if you look at the example address, see the example address? Let me show you.
Well, let me see if I can give you my IP address.
So you look at this, it's IP4, the IP address, TCP, 4001, IPFS.
Here's my IP address.
Okay, and then it has the address, which they all seem to start with a QM.
Yeah. So like, if you put my IP address, which I just posted in the chat, in there, so it's IP4, my IP address /TCP / I don't know, 4001, I guess would just be the port. /IPFS and then do that, maybe that'll connect you to me.
Yeah, except that you don't have a dedicated IP address where you are.
Oh, I would need one. I wonder because theoretically IPFS should be able to be served from any laptop without a dedicated IP, and there must be a way of creating an informal ad hoc network this way.
Yeah. I mean, I just got a different thing here totally, and I can't find it now at all. Maybe I clicked over here, connected to your API. Is your API other than 401? Okay, so this an address here. Which is the prefix.
Yeah.
Except this address here, 127.0.0.1 is localhost. It's not. It's not. You know, it's not an address.
Where did you find this menu, Jim?
I clicked on this little circle, top circle here.
Oh. Oh, it is localhost. What happens if I put in my name, my IP address?
So you probably don't want to change this, because this is, the 5001 is the standard port where it's running.
Yeah, I just put /. What happens here if you try this? Can you? I mean, if I type that in my own thing, that's just me.
I don't know why I don't get the chat. Seems like the chat comes up, but only when I cancel the share. Right.
Well, when I put your ID in there in the window and so I put your ID in there, and then I made that thing look like this line above here.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally green. I got a green on the add button.
Oh, cool.
But I don't think that that's not your IP address. Now, what's your IP address?
It's pasted in the chat window. This is like, I mean, at least this is the one that it's
read it to me.
Hold on.
I could not connect to the provided peer.
Okay.
My IP address is 10.84.41.157.
Let me try. Now I have 213 peers. That's cool.
Yeah.
Could not connect to the provided peer. Okay. Yeah, so I think we've got to have a static IP address or host a node on a cloud server or something.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny because maybe at home I can do this. At the school, they have everything locked down. The IT department's super insane. I can't run a server here. They won't even let me hardline into the Ethernet. I went through this whole thing with them. Everything has to be wireless. So it's even running a Raspberry Pi for me. And maybe if
So let me understand. So for instance, Jim has a DigitalOcean account. So on the DigitalOcean account, since that's a cloud service that has a static IP, and someone would be able to connect to that. Is that correct?
In theory, yes.
In
Yeah.
theory, okay.
What's DigitalOcean?
It's a cloud provider.
Cloud hosting service,
Like DreamHost or whatever?
Yeah.
possibly. I don't know.
No, DreamHost is more shared services, but
Oh, this is a dedicated rack.
it's virtual machines and dedicated machines, mostly virtual machines.
Oh, word. So what I'm wondering is, I mean, so I buy DreamHost. I do have DreamHost space shared. But
You generally don't get. You have to buy a dedicated IP address.
I wonder how much that would cost. I mean, I would consider doing that just as a test case. If you had one and then I had one, then we could see if we about connecting them. How much?
I think, yeah, that's a possibility, but I think we need to do some more playing with this and get it working in a more simple-minded fashion before we start adding more hardware.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as we're going through all this, I'm wondering why we can't use something like Keybase. But I always wonder why we can't use it.
Like in lieu of IPFS?
Say again?
In lieu of IPFS?
As a replacement instead of IPSF?
Yes.
IPSF.
IPFS.
So
Because all we're wanting to do is be able to store a file in a distributed fashion securely, and we could do that on Keybase. Plus, we get all the identity solution that Keybase provides, right there in front of us, rather than. Anyway,
Gary, can we set up a time maybe like to look at Keybase together?
we talked about that. Let me look at my calendar.
just, I got a basic question about Keybase. So, for instance, Gary, your image of your robot. So if you upload that to Keybase, is that stored on one central computer, or is that distributed among many computers? Or I guess I should say,
it's a distributed database. Let me.
It is distributed.
Am I still sharing?
Yes, it looks like you are.
Okay, let me go to Keybase.
And the next question would be, so that file, I'm curious, like IPFS, they take a JPEG or an MPG file, break it up into 256 kilobyte parts, and those parts are what's distributed on the network. And then when you do a call, it finds those individual parts and brings them back together. So I wonder if Keybase works in that fashion.
Well,
And it's not apparently it's a hash. It's the hash of those parts which are saved on the distributed network.
Keybase is a third-party service. That's the problem. No, it's not.
It's not a protocol.
It's not a. What is it?
Well, and that kind of gets away from, Eric, what you're wanting to do is to be on do protocols, not platforms.
Yeah, I think IPFS is a platform, but it's also a protocol. It's like it basically can be. I see it as a protocol.
Right.
but I'm interested in Keybase as an identity management solution. I just haven't played with it.
Okay, let me look at my calendar and let's, I don't, it's behaving very slowly. It may be because I'm in Zoom, but
Hold on. Give me 1 second again. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Someone's typing away.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there's some conflicting info on how public this directory is, how decentralized it is. Getting 250 gigabytes. Yeah, it's a third-party service.
the directory is,
Yeah, the file system.
so the files are distributed, but they've centralized the directory. And that's what the peers are all about. You know, I would almost say at this point in time, we're going to run into these shortcomings to anybody's method, because only our chain is going to completely solve all our problems. But we need to get something deployed now so that we can start building on a prototype, rather than just sitting here and twiddling our thumbs waiting for our chain to come online. And so I don't see, you know, the fact that IPFS is in some sense centralized as being a a concern of ours because whatever we come up with should be able to be moved to a more decentralized platform if we do it right.
IPFS is not centralized. I mean, it's we have issue connecting with public IP addresses. I'm not quite sure why we're having that trouble.
Couldn't we all run a node on Robot, Jim? Couldn't we all run our own node on the Robot server? Create a directory and install a.
Yeah, we could also run a tunnel.
Yeah, would a VPN actually help with that?
Not really.
I think that would just complicate things. The tunnel is actually doing what a VPN would do for you, but it would get in your way.
Nice.
So
maybe I need to do a little more reading on this, and maybe we can reach out to them and ask them about this. I think this is a good project for us to sort of mess with for the next week or so.
IPFS?
Yeah, just like really kind of figure this out. I think this is a really good place to start, just working with stuff, and then we can figure out what the next thing is on top of that. But let's like figure out if we can create a closed IPFS network that's just us. That's with a file. It's issued a hash. We can access the file with a public-private key, and just figure that out. Let's just figure this out. I mean, I think it's like it's a good place to begin. Yeah, is everyone cool with that?
Yeah, I can. I want to play with it some more anyway. You know, it's the time is right to start dealing with these issues because we're there. I mean, we need to be writing the code for these dApps that we're envisioning, even though we don't have the perfect blockchain solution yet. But we do know what we want in our interface or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah. So to that extent, Gary, do you have any time on Wednesday to?
Yeah, I was looking at my calendar. I think so. Hold on.
Wednesday afternoon would be a great time to try and do a little bit of Keybase, like around 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, 3 or 4 o'clock is fine on Wednesday. My time, that would be 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, it would be 2 or 3 o'clock.
Wait, aren't you in Florida?
Central. No, I'm Fort Worth.
Oh, you're in Texas?
Yeah.
Oh, why did I think you were in Florida? Oh.
Yeah, Jim and I, both of us are in Florida.
Oh, yeah, and Gary's. For some reason, I thought all 3 of you guys were in Florida. I'm like, I should take a trip to Florida. All the cool people are hanging out in Florida. You know.
That's fine. You want to say
3 o'clock my time would be 2 o'clock your time?
Yeah, 2 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock Central. I'll add it now.
Okay, Keybase hang. Do you want me to send you an invite?
Oh, I probably won't get it.
Okay.
I'm just going to get in the habit of looking at my calendar every morning when I get up.
So, but in terms of the where I meet you, should we meet on this?
Yeah, let's. Jim, can we use your room, or should we start our own?
What time did you say?
It's like 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock your time
On Wednesday?
on Wednesday.
That's fine. You can use the room.
Okay. We'll meet in this room at 3 o'clock, and you can DM me in the.
That's right after the debrief.
Cool.
Yeah, it will be right after the debrief.
All right. So my work for today, the next couple of days, is I just really look through the IPFS documentation and see if we can find any clues about dealing with static IPs.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things we can do with that before we have to start renting any space, because these things aren't going to need to run very long for us to, come up with our proof of concept.
I mean, the other thing is, like, what my fantasy is just to have this all running on Raspberry Pis that are functioning like servers to serve the content, and literally I can just, like, when someone buys an art object from me, I literally give them an IPFS node as a Raspberry Pi, as part of the physical artwork.
Sure.
That's like kind of like a weird thing I've been thinking about for a while. But it would actually be super useful, because then it's just a thumb drive, Raspberry Pi in a box, gold plated with diamond studded, lots of value, whatever. But very valuable. You want to research. In any event, yeah. So that's would be superb. So all right. So let's focus on IPFS. But Gary, we'll have a Keybase hang. Obviously, if you guys are around and want to hang, we'll post it in the Discord. But it'll be in this room at 3 p.m. Is there anything else that you guys need? I mean, Jim, one thing I was thinking about recently was, I never followed through on creating like a spiel, like a half an hour spiel, like the kind of like, this is art in the blockchain sort of PowerPoint deck. I'm still thinking about doing that at some point. I don't know if those articles the last article that I put out, like the last version of the distributed object framework, was helpful to you guys. Was that like at all useful, or was it just like total like nonsense blabbering?
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly the sort of thing we need, and it helped me get a better vision of what you're thinking about. And without it, I'm not sure I would have been here yet. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Okay, so that was helpful. Jim, was that helpful, clarifying to you at all? Where you were just kind of like, yeah whatever.
Yeah, very, very good. I mean, I probably should spend more time with it, so I get it.
Okay, so you didn't actually read it yet. That's okay. That's acceptable.
Eric, I keep those on my screen, and as far as reading them, they're part of my worldview right now. So yeah, they've been very helpful.
So one of the things that I have to do actually for school right now is I have to start creating diagrammatics. And so I think in the next week, I'd like to get a rubric, like a basic outline of this created as a diagram, albeit an ugly one, but just a baseline flow chart, so that it may be easier to visualize how these parts work together. And then we can sort of talk about whether or not that's viable, more as a visual aid. So I have to, I also do want to reach out and have a conversation with someone from Holochain just to start a dialogue. I know you guys are talking with them on more general terms.
Well, not really. We're talking to them about getting to the point, so that you can start building an app. That's pretty specific, and I think it sort of dovetails into what we're all talking about here now.
So did you talk to them at all about what we're doing here, or was it just the conversation more about?
No, we talked we did talk about your idea, and that I felt like it should be pursued as a potential first gap. Now, whether we do it on Holochain or not yet, I don't know. But I'm like you. I want to know more about Holochain because I know a little bit about their philosophy, and it aligns well with my own. So at one point, I thought we would be doing a lot more with Holochain. I'm still open to that possibility. But right now, I see our work being at the lower level possibly, and just ironing out some of the technicalities so that we all have a model in our mind of what would be happening here in these early stages of this project. But I've got some ideas on Keybase that I would like to throw at you, and I'm sure you'll reject them, but maybe not without planting some seeds in your mind of how useful Keybase is.
Well, we need an identity solution. We need something, right? And I'm open to. I don't know anything about sovereign identity. I'm just starting to learn about it from you guys. So I don't know. I have no idea what the right way forward with that is. And so, but I know you guys have been talking about Keybase, this whole time, and I really feel like I should spend some time with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on Keybase. Jim has got Robot running on Keybase. That project is just sort of idling now because we can't. For a while, we had some momentum with Keybase, but it was really we weren't getting the right people to Keybase. We're getting the theorists, but we're not getting the technicians to Keybase. And you are, and people who have depths in mind are really ready for Keybase. Now, did you say you had created an account over there at all, or you haven't?
No, I don't think I have yet.
Okay. That would be a good exercise along with kind of showing you some of my ideas about Keybase.
I love that. I'd love to see what you have cooking with that. So let's plan on doing that. Should I not bother reaching out to the person that reached out? Like Michael Linton put me in touch with someone over there who emailed me, but I followed up a little bit, but I didn't really set up time to talk with them. Should I not bother with that because you guys are already talking with them on Tuesday?
On Holochain?
Yeah, I forget who was there's someone.
He probably hooked you up with Robert Best.
No, it was hold on. Paul Daoust. Paul.
I don't have I'm sort of at the same place you are with that. I might pursue it. I feel that this meeting we're going to have tomorrow afternoon would be a better use of our time. And I've heard that name, but I really don't know.
Yeah.
Some kind of like outreach coordinator. I think he's some kind of outreach person for them.
It probably would be a good use of your time. I don't know that it would. I've spent hours in the community on Holochain, and I doubt that their introductory spiel is going to be that useful to me. I'm more interested in getting up to speed on how I might develop a DApp.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could attend these meetings on Tuesday. Unfortunately, I have obligations at that exact time.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I felt you couldn't make that time, but we didn't consider adjusting the time.
No, it's do you. I mean, whatever. It's like, we all got crazy schedules.
The other thing I wanted to mention before I sign off here is I hope that we're still communicating with Michael Linton about open money, because I see your project as being perfect for a trial run or a way to implement the principles that he's espousing, and leverage off the software he's already built.
I mean, so my conversations with Michael have been very specifically, we're in agreement that that's what we're going to try doing.
Okay.
I think like I meet with him like Wednesdays, sometimes after Dig Life. And he, we're I think foundational to that, like there's sort of two tracks. There's like that side, which is going to be more of the conceptual and aesthetic side. And then there's like this conversation, which is like, what's the distributed storage platform? How we manage digital identity, which can be very philosophical. And so like part of that is sort of containing that conversation about like, where does this want to live? What's the future of this or that, the other thing? Because there's like two different philosophical kind of conversations that are happening in tandem. And I'm in a way trying to constrain both so we just get something done, because this is what's hampered the development of this project for the last 4 years, is that none of us can agree on anything. Yeah. It's like, it's crazy. Like we just start talking and like, no matter who I'm working with, like no one can fundamentally agree that anything is the right way forward. And so nothing gets made. And it's like, I'm like, there's a certain amount of conversation that needs to happen, but like I'm sort of the mindset that making is better. Strong and wrong, as my friend
Strong
said.
and wrong. Yeah.
And if we get into, Michael has started his spiel with me before in open money, and he wanted me to dive in by myself, but I didn't feel like, I felt like diving into that particular project by myself is just pointless. The whole point of the project is for, community creation, and developing something new.
In an hour, I have a meeting with this place in Buffalo called it's like the Innovation Center. It's a small business development center, but it's kind of like this big warehouse hangar that they converted into a startup like kind of incubator in downtown Buffalo. And I'm going to go talk with them about mounting an exhibition there in the spring. And so like basically the idea is I'm trying to line up like an actual space for us to do post-capitalist karaoke, and that implicates a broader community. This would happen like April or May or something like that. But the idea is that conversation is sort of directly moving towards like some type of execution.
Yes, and I love this idea of these communities and cooperatives forming in the physical universe. But I really think the virtual universe is the place to create it first, because it's so much easier to do in the physical, in the virtual universe.
Totally, yeah. I mean, there's this idea of developing things in virtual spaces, but like what's very interesting about that is how that bleeds over into physical reality. And like if we can structure new forms of relationship in like the virtual space, does that then bleed out and start to restructure physical space? And like, in art, there's this, I'll send you guys an article on this. It's called Post-Internet, right? And it's this idea that all art in the last 15 years takes the presence of the network. It's implicit in the work itself. Like you can't actually separate the work from the network, and the work is always sort of addressing or feeding back to those conditions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It sort of reminds me of the medium is the message.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's like a specific kind of like moment in art history that was coined maybe not quite 10 years ago, but like especially in like new media. And so this idea of the virtual and the real, we don't really talk about that anymore. Like in art galleries that used to be digital art galleries, now they're just like like, I mean, there was this big gallery in New York called Postmasters Gallery, and they were kind of like the cool digital art gallery for 25 years. They were super cutting edge. And then around 10 years ago, or maybe a little less than that, they issued a proclamation that we are no longer a digital art gallery. We are just an art gallery, because there is truly no difference now between digital and physical art. It's just art. And like those, whether or not we're moving in between those spaces doesn't matter anymore. It's just, it's all the same thing. And the line has been so blurred that we don't need to compartmentalize it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Great.
Let me see if I can post a link to, I think there's like a Wikipedia entry. I don't know. I have to. All right. There's a Wikipedia. There's a few other articles. Maybe the Wikipedia is okay. Marissa Olson. She's terrifying. She was my advisor at my undergrad. She was like the one who coined the term, or tried to take credit for coining the term. Anyway, guys. So Gary, I think I'm hearing what you're saying. Michael is definitely going to be part of the conversation, and we'll be developing the concept for the piece in tandem with the technical infrastructure. And I think that's like kind of like why this project is really cool, but also really ambitious, because we're developing the distributed object framework just so we can create this crazy art project, you know, which I've maybe completed. Like, I need to redo the videos, but the videos and the actual like art part is like maybe 60 to 70% done already for like for the first video.
Yeah.
So like then it's just a matter of instantiating it and instantiating the behavioral aspect that we want attached to it.
Yeah.
And developing like a front end interface, which I can try and do here.
Yeah, I'm going to start attending a lot more of the DIGLI meetings because I see us not only benefiting from Michael's work, but benefiting from the collaborative spirit of DIGLI, and actually inviting and hopefully successfully inviting many of the members over there to what we're doing. And I think the Michael Linton's open college session will be the place to do it. And I think we should push it. And in fact, Jim and Steve, would you be interested in joining the next session of Open Money?
Yeah, what day and time is that?
That hasn't been determined to my knowledge. Michael, I spoke to Michael 2 or 3 days ago and asked him, are you going to start the Open Money College? And he said, you know, it's 90 to 95% certain that he is. And he has already started, you know, wrapping up loose ends so that he could move his efforts over there. So I believe him when he says that. But, you know, all of us have tried to start, you know, initiatives around something several times, and you know, they fizzle. You know, we start these things that need, you know, five or more participants, and then we end up 2 people, just not enough to get anything done, you know.
I may be able to pull more people in from the Money Lab group that may be interested in this.
Yes.
Aren't part of Dig Life or any of these collectives, but once it's set up and it's like sort of packaged, I could probably bring in another couple of people from my network who may be interested in it. But he needs to package it first and get it actually looking like it's a real thing.
Okay. And I think so too. And we, you know, maybe we want to start with the end product and say, okay, you know, work backwards from there. But I want to talk to you a little more about the Keybase idea I've got, and the idea of the art object being more than just the artifact.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I I think I have to split in like the next minute or two.
I do too. I've overstayed my availability.
Thank you so much, guys. Is there anything else that we need to just touch on before we split?
I think we're good.
Cool.
See
All
ya.
right. So I'll
All right.
talk to y'all soon.